Why do we need foreign troops and police in Australia? Trump tries to pull his troops out of the Middle East, and Victoria's ominous Omnibus bill passes. This is The Arc with Riccardo Bosi. Riccardo, it's good to see you.
Man, I'm tired this week. It's been busy.
We really struggled thinking about what we wanted to talk about in this episode, didn't we?
An abundance of riches, it's called.
Indeed.
Oh, man. So what's been happening?
Yeah.
I can tell your listeners this week I'll have to catch up on the sleep I didn't get when I passed because we've been flat out. Great news, though. All good news for us. And by us, I mean Australia. But on A1 specifically, I've been doing a number of interviews, international interviews now, where A1 is now getting international recognition from big names, and I've been invited on. I haven't been asking. They've found me. They've heard what A1 stands for, and we've done interviews. And these are people, the Conoscenti, those that are aware of who's who in the zoo globally. People like Sasha Stone, Charlie Ward interviewed, and both those interviews are up. In fact, I did a couple with Sasha Stone. And we completed an interview yesterday with Robert David Steele, former CIA spy and USMC soldier. And that'll be up in the next, I guess, 24 hours. So we're getting some big recognition internationally for the philosophy behind Australia. One, what we stand for, what we want to do, and more importantly, how we want to do it. Because the airwaves are full of people with great ideas, a lot of problem definition, a lot of people knowing what's going wrong, a lot of ideas of what should be done. And I think what's really got international attention is that here in Australia, we finally have a party that is going to bring in a real sense, real solutions to real problems. So it's been fantastic, very, very busy, but extremely gratifying.
Beautiful. That's excellent to hear. I think we'll know you are definitely on the right track when we get international attacks as well. Because then if it warrants attacks, that's the biggest compliment in my mind. Good for nothing Gladys has been going through quite a crisis this week. So this week it was revealed that she continued to have a very intimate relationship with someone who was found to be corrupt in the Liberal Party for a number of different dealings. What are your thoughts on that whole fiasco for New South Wales?
Well, for those who aren't aware of the story, Gladys had a relationship with an MP who was selling, and it's been admitted in court. I've seen the transcript and watched the replay. He admitted in court using his office in Parliament basically as the front office for business dealings, where he would sell visas and other favours and access for money. Bags of thousands of dollars turning up. So that's the story. He's corrupt. But that's not actually the story, because corrupt politicians, they're a dime a dozen. If you actually catch one, that is unusual, I must admit. But what was funny was good for nothing Gladys and the machine behind her rolled out the sympathy vote immediately. Now, women make me laugh. The ones that say, I demand to be treated as an equal, but the moment things get tough, they cry and they get the sympathy vote. So what did the Liberal machine roll out? Now, let me just make it clear. I don't believe Gladys didn't know this was going on. I have no evidence of it, but I'm allowed my opinion. I just don't trust her. Now, she says that she knows nothing, you know nothing about the corruption, and she should be allowed to say that, but I don't trust Gladys. Because how can a woman who allows doctors to kill babies at the point of birth have any moral claim to anything? She can't. So I don't trust her, I don't believe her. But what was the funniest part was the Liberal machine rolled out the defence before the attack started. And that was that imbecilic DJ that exposes children on radio to confess their darkest secrets. I can't remember his name, and I don't much care. They rolled out one of the wives and girlfriends from the AFL, one of the WAGs as they're called, to say how strong. And they even rolled out our chief imbecile, Scott Morrison, Silent Scott, to say that he had more respect for her because she was very strong. Please. I mean, if there's ever an indication you're in trouble is when you get those three clowns of that magnitude defending her. Look, my guess is this. She's been under attack inside the party because they want to get rid of her. But she's reliable. She delivers for the real masters of New South Wales, and they want to keep her in place. That's just my opinion. I'm allowed to have one. And so they rolled out this farcical defence of good-for-nothing Gladys. It doesn't matter if she goes, because there's nobody in the Liberal Party in New South Wales that's worthy of the vote, in my opinion. But, keep trotting them out. That's okay. You'll all be sacked. And if you're found guilty, you'll be in jail. So that's good for nothing, Gladys.
I heard you guys had a bit of in the Queensland election, some riff-raff removing signs. Is any of
absolutely.
That true?
Let's jump from the Liberal Party to the other arm of the same uni party. That's the Labor Party. As you know, we've got a couple of candidates. Well, not we, but independents. I'm running in Nicklin, and we have an independent running in Currumbin. So they're independent candidates because the party's still not registered, and that's fine. But what's been happening is the corflutes are apparently a big thing in Queensland. Every state has its own political culture, and corflutes, and that's the big posters you see with the smiling face saying "Vote for me." And they're big. Well, strangely enough, Liberal, One Nation, ours, right, have all just disappeared. I mean, torn down and disappeared. One party's corflutes are still up. That's the Labor Party. Now, please don't leap to any conclusions because it'd be wrong to make any assumptions and to claim Labor's ripping them down. That would be wrong.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of that. But the Labor Party corflutes are up, everybody else is down. That's story number one. Story number two. Now, where was it again? I'm trying to remember. The Andina Farmers Market. One of my supporters was out there and spreading the good word about my candidacy in Nicklin. And good old Kevin Rudd turned up with the local Labor candidate doing the old grip and grin. and my volunteer wandered up, and she's a diminutive individual, but she's very feisty. And she pulled up Kevin and said, what's your opinion on the 90-year suppression order on the 28 VIP pedophiles?
No, she did not
She
ask
did.
that. Are you kidding me?
No, she's good. She's solid.
Jeez.
And apparently his face dropped. He had a look of horror, absolute horror on his face. He shepherded her off to one side and said, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. It's a conspiracy theory. And she pressed him, and then I believe it was the actual candidate, then in a very unfriendly tone, let's say, suggested she should just back off. So there you go. So we have, in my opinion, this bloated psychopath, Kevin Rudd, helping Labor Party get into Nicklin. So Nicklin voters, there's a little insight for you if you're interested. So it's been an interesting time. The Currumbin candidate, independent candidate, Tracy, absolutely blitzed her speech this morning. Knocked it out of the park. She's strong. Yeah. She's feisty. She's a businesswoman in Currumbin, which is a electorate that borders New South Wales. She's lived and worked in the community for 50 years. She's exactly the sort of candidate that every Australian should want, and she's absolutely solid. Solid as a rock. She's doing well up there. Yeah,
I like Tracy. She's really lovely. We always go back and forth on social media. She's a lovely lady, and I think she's going to do a great job for her community. There's also, coming back to, I hate talking about COVID. You know, Riccardo, we've been talking about this for every episode since we started this show. COVID has been getting a lot of pushback from the professional class. What are your thoughts on that?
It's fantastic. Globally, groups of doctors are coming together to point out the medical fallacies that are being sold by mainstream media. Lawyers are banding together, most notably in Germany, but Europe-wide. Lawyers are banding together to point out the legal flaws in the whole COVID response. My question is this: where's the military? And people would say, well, hang on, what's the military got to do with any of this? Well, we'll talk about it in detail shortly, which is a bill before Parliament. But we have a bunch of superannuated generals, superannuated cowards. Let's be very clear about this. Superannuated cowards of generals, air marshals and admirals who will say nothing and have said nothing about this bill I'm about to talk about. Now, they've got nothing to lose. They hang around. Hopefully, if they're compliant enough, they might become a state governor or governor general. I'm not sure what they're waiting for. They're utterly unemployable. And it's almost as if they have taken an oath, other than the one to Australia and the Queen. They've taken an oath to conceal and never reveal. It's almost like they have a higher loyalty, because if they had half the intestinal fortitude of my wife, they would actually get together and make a statement about this Defence Force bill. And we'll talk about it shortly. Yeah. But not one has come forward. They are silent to a man. And lawyers and doctors can band together, and those men that we have paid and promoted for their courage and leadership have demonstrated neither. So, there you go.
Interesting. Some would say that they should stay out of politics and they shouldn't have an opinion on it. What do you say to those people?
Once you're out of uniform, they should speak up. I can understand. Let's say we've got a chief of the Defence Force that disagrees profoundly with the government of the day. that Chief of the Defence Force has a choice. That Defence Force chief can resign and make a public statement to the effect that he believes the government is off track or the government is treasonous. That is a choice. See, I was only doing my duty. I was only following orders. Was not accepted at the Nuremberg trials after World War II. It was not accepted as a defence, and it's not a defence, ever. Not in law, and certainly not as a man, as a moral individual. So if old mate Angus Campbell, the current Chief of the Defence Force, believes in what the government is doing, well, 10 out of 10. But if he has the least doubt, he should resign and say so. But he won't. He's just going to go along. And it's almost like General Jodl, Hitler's lickspittle, did whatever he was told. Well, good on you, Angus, mate. I hope it's worth it. I hope it's worth it.
Oh, maybe he's trying to reform the system from the inside.
Okay, and that's a good argument. They say that. It's like the Liberal Party. Oh, we're trying to clean it up from within. Here's my answer. How many babies have to be raped and killed before you realise that you're not going to win? How many? Give me a number. 100, 1,000, 10,000? Before you realise you're on a losing streak? I thought it was a general skill to read the battlefield and know how best to attack. So no. This reform from the inside nonsense, you've had 30, 40, 50 years. And if they are so dense they cannot see the big picture, they cannot see the next step that will follow, then they don't deserve to be in the job. But we'll talk about the defence legislation and you'll know why I'm so hot and bothered about it.
Well, why wait? Why wait? I want to hear about this legislation. Or should we start on Victoria's bastardous Omnibus bill, which is just a disaster of a breakfast. It's amazing what they tried to pull off.
Yeah, the Omnibus bill. And this is typical, and people, you've got to wake up. The most egregious part was excised from the bill, and this was the detention on suspicion of not following state orders, detention for 30 months with no legal recourse. There isn't a totalitarian government in the world that has that law, and yet Victorians think it was a great victory to have that pulled off. It's insane. It's nuts. People, you've got to realise, sovereignty comes from you. It doesn't come from Comrade Dan. You should be able to sack your politicians. You can't allow this to go on. And I've heard nonsensical statements like, Dan's a strong leader. No, Dan's a totalitarian. And Victorians are too weak. And you don't understand your rights. And I'm not talking legal rights. I'm talking your rights as individuals, as humans. You've got to stand up, organise, and prepare to take your state back. Yeah,
it's completely against the Charter of Human Rights. You have the right to express your political views in a protest form, a peaceful protest form. I haven't seen a lot of violence at all from any of the protests around Australia. So why are they getting shut down? Excellent question. Ask your MPs. Do something about it. Get some answers. Stop sitting in your hands. It's frustrating looking at Victoria. I'm still frustrated Victoria didn't come out that time we went out on the 5th of September. Remember that? Remember that 5 weeks ago? We went out. The Western Australia went out. The whole of New South Wales went out. Queensland went out. South Australia went out. We tallied over 30,000 people went out across Australia. I thought Victoria would have hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe 3,000, maybe 2,000. Why? Because a bunch of people decided that that was not the time to riot. And it's not the time to riot, it's the time to protest. They decided not to protest either. What's wrong, guys? They were waiting, they said, we'll do it in a week when we know what the roadmap is. You missed your opportunity, you lost the momentum, and people don't want to go out anymore. They don't want to protest. That was your moment. I'm hoping, look, I'm saying this in a very, I want to teach you the lesson, but I'm not even sure if you're going to be able to last long enough to actually implement it, I'll be honest. Victoria might be past that point because so many people have just gone along with it for so long. However, I was very encouraged, I don't know if you saw this, a store owner of a Harry's store, menswear outlet, he opened his business and he'd received hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales, hundreds of thousands of dollars. He exceeded by 60%, in one day of sales, he exceeded by 60% his sales on his most busy day of the year, which would be Boxing Day. He'd received, some people would come into his store and they'd give him $1,000 and they'd say, I want a gift card. And when he gives them the $1,000, they go and get the gift card, that person's gone. What does that tell you? And he had a message for everyone. He had a message for all Australians. Open your businesses up. If you're a small business, open it up. You know, he said, I had enough funds for 6 months. We're past 6 months. If I wait 2 weeks, I'm gone. And good on him. You know, history favours the bold, as I like to say.
Leading from the front by example, I did see that story and I retweeted the story very quickly. What a champion. This is exactly what's got to be done. Here's a news flash for some people that may not be paying attention. One of the many goals of the globalists is to break down the middle class. What does that mean? The middle class are the backbone of a modern Western democracy because they have power, they have influence. Now, the globalists, the elite, don't want that. They want serfs, they want slaves. And that's effectively what they're doing. They're building a serf class, a slave class. They have to destroy the middle class. They have to destroy SMEs. That's why Australia why we're so keen on pushing the every lever and pulling every lever and pushing every button that'll help SMEs get off the ground. Tax breaks for the first few years just to get off the ground, because we need to rebuild the middle class. We need to rebuild the SME population in order to survive this, because they've successfully set up Amazon and they've set up all these fantastic shops that'll deliver stuff to you, but there's nobody in between. So you're just the proles there to buy their stuff made by slaves in China. And you've seen those ads on YouTube. You know, I bought this for $2.50 and sold it for $15 and I made a gazillion and I'm now traveling the world. Well, good. Anybody can make money on slave labor. Well done. But what we have to do in a very practical sense is do what this man did. Get the business off the ground again. Open it up. And the stronger the SME population, the weaker the globalists are. That's the trick. And that's why they've been crushing small business for years. And that's why every government has progressively undermined every SME there is. And there's countless examples. Just do your own research. Have a look at the SMEs and how they've gone backwards. Manufacturing, primary producing, the lot.
Absolutely.
Because it's easier to control a population when you control the manufacturing and the food chain. And you have Amazon flying in with stuff. So 10 out of 10 to John. Open the business. Lead from the front by example. They can't lock us all up.
Riccardo, are we about to be invaded?
It's a good question.
I mean, this defence legislation amendment bill that's been put forward for the Defence Force emergencies is amazing. This bill was put forward this year and it's been heard a couple of times this last couple of weeks. It's very scary. Can you explain to me what the bill is, if you've never heard of it before,
Sure.
why people should care and why it is? At what point do we riot? Honestly, I'm not even kidding. At what point do you riot? Because the institutions are stacked against us.
Yeah. Well, that's when you fight. I love a fight. I love a fight when the odds are. When it's easy, it's boring. When it's hard, that's when I get a bit excited. I look forward to it. Turn on Billy Idol, Rebel Yell, and away we go. Let's get stuck in. Let me read the title of the bill, because it sounds quite benign. Defence Legislation Amendment (brackets) Enhancement of Defence Force Response to Emergencies Bill 2020. That sounds pretty good. Now I've got to give you a bit better background in order to understand what this means. First of all, it means that they want to introduce foreign police and foreign militaries into Australia to help with emergencies. First question, what possible emergency could warrant foreign militaries and foreign police? Now this isn't a terror attack. This is Defence Force aid to the civil community. This is fire, flood and drought. Now why would we want foreign militaries and police to do that and give them immunity from prosecution? Think about that for a minute. Now, I've worked with foreign militaries and foreign police, and if you think VicPol's bad, compared to most armies and police forces on the planet, VicPol are angels. Because just because they wear a uniform doesn't make them good and upright citizens. I can tell you, most of them are murderous bastards. And we can go to PNG. I spent a good couple of years in Papua New Guinea during the during the days of the Bougainville Revolutionary Army and the PNG Defence Force. I was actually tasked to run infantry wing. So we ran promotion courses from corporal to warrant officer, as well as pre-deployment training for the battalions operating in Bougainville. And they turned up and they looked like soldiers. But I can tell you, one company of soldiers that I trained, and they'd just returned, and I had to retrain them, which is not unusual. And these people, the officer commanding, was insane, certifiable. In fact, one night, we were in the mess one night, and there's a trick in PNG, never stay past 10, because it gets out of control really quickly. Anyway, he assessed that somebody had offended him, and so he disappeared. He stormed out of the officer's mess. He came back in full tribal gear, including bow and arrow, and started shooting people.
Wow.
Okay? So there you go. So imagine this major turning up with his company of PNG soldiers who had just returned from Bougainville. They spent their time chewing buai. Buai is a natural plant that grows. If you chew it with lime, it gives you a drug-like effect. But they spent their time chewing buai and raping the nurses. So this is the sort of people they're going to bring into Australia and make them immune from prosecution. And why? There is no reason to do so. We have sufficient resources in this country to handle any drought, fire or flood. We really do, once it's properly organised, but it's not, because they want the grass to burn, they want the trees to burn, they want the koalas to die. That's why they bow to this green nonsense. So here we go back to it. So they want to bring in these police and defence people to help with Defence Force aid to the civil community. It sounds normal, but that makes sense, mate. It's okay. But this is where the generals, admirals and air marshals are complete imbeciles or corrupted. I can't tell which, because it only takes a very minor amendment to go from Defence Force aid to the civil community, which is fire, flood and drought, to Defence Force aid to the civil power, which is now the authority to deliver lethal force, generally used for siege hostage situations, terrorist situations. And it doesn't take much to jump from one to the other. It's just an amendment to an existing piece of legislation. Now, once again, either our generals, admirals and air marshals, and explains my comment earlier, the superannuated cowards have not said anything. Now, either they know what's going on or they're too stupid to see what's going on, but they haven't said a word. And blind Freddy can see exactly the plan. Now, if you think I'm being too much of a conspiracy theorist, I mentioned it last week that back in 2016, WA passed the law that allows the police to use reasonable force to inject you with a vaccination. Now, out of the blue, 2016, why would that legislation be put in place? So it can be matched with the legislation in other states, so that in 2020, when the government says we are going to impose a vaccine on you, the states already have the legislation in place. This is how chess is played.
Yeah.
You look 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. But of course, what they want to do, they want to convince the population of Australia that there's nothing to see here, it's all good, just keep going. Don't bother reading Hansard, don't bother reading the news. Make sure the ABC tells you COVID stories. The fact that the numbers are out and there is no COVID death rate at all.
Yep.
Strangely enough, in the UK, what was it? Nobody's died of old age. For the first time in history, nobody's died of old age. So once again, the global elite are controlling us through the Australian elite, and we're being sold down the river. So that's the Defence Force Response to Emergencies Act enhancement. It's not needed. It's wrong. And the Defence Force shouldn't be used on anything except fire, flood and drought, and in exceptional circumstances to resolve a situation, even a terrorist incident, where the police cannot handle it, because it is the police responsibility in the first instance. It is un-Australian, and that's a dumb word normally, but there is no precedent in Australian history where this has even been considered. Because I can remember back in the 90s when I was in Headquarters Special Forces in Canberra, we were very careful to make sure that lunatic governments didn't see us as a weapon of choice for political means. And there was a very strict control on how and when and why the SAS or Special Forces could be called out to assist police. Because Australian soldiers, sailors and airmen have no rights above that of the average citizen in Australia, and that's how it should be. And to give them the capacity to deliver lethal force against Australians, that's a bridge too far. and I can tell you this, anybody involved in this that doesn't speak out, when I get to be in Parliament, in the federal Parliament, we have an A1 government, watch this space, because we will be running we'll be establishing a Royal Commission into COVID, every aspect of COVID. And if anybody, and I'm not making a threat, this is a promise, if anybody is found guilty of treason, they'll be hung by the neck until they're dead. And those lesser crimes, lower standards of treason and sedition, they'll be jailed for the term of their natural life without the possibility of parole.
Yep.
This is serious. This government, these governments, the political elite, the bureaucracy, the military, everybody, the media, have lived in a consequence-free world. Well, guess what? Consequences are coming back, and they will pay dearly. And here's a warning to every soldier, sailor, and airman out there. If you say, oh, but General Smith told me to do it, that's no defence. So you best work out where your loyalties lie. To some corrupt globalist cabal run by cowards in uniform, or to the Australian people. This is stand-up time. This is serious business. You make a decision and get ready to live with it. Not a threat, just a promise.
2 questions, and I haven't told you about these. How are you still alive?
The grace of God and a good background in my profession.
Next question. Are you a Freemason?
No. And those who have taken an oath that supersedes an oath to their country have no place in my party and no place in government. And by government, I mean politics, bureaucracy, you name it. Because here's what we're going to institute. Here's another little secret I'll let out today. Every politician has to go through a security clearance up to secret level. Every minister, top secret positive vet. And I've been through the process and it's uncomfortable. Every secret you have will be exposed. So every bureaucrat, senior bureaucrat, same thing. Secret vet, secret clearance. And if you're in particular high positions like the Secretary of Department, top secret positive vet. Which is a technical term that the people who are receiving this information know exactly what I mean. Because if staffers are required to get these clearances, why aren't the politicians? Wow. It wouldn't be because that way corrupt pedophiles can stay in power, is it? No. Every politician, once elected, will go through this process and they'll be charged with the crimes that they have committed that are revealed by the secret clearance. And so, folks, you want to put your hand up to run for Parliament, you better be clean. Because every dirty politicians' secrets will be found out. And those doing the vetting, and here's the trick, here's how they do it. They get one of their mates to run the vetting and clear it. If you falsely clear someone, you will attract the penalty of the person who you allowed in. So if you allow in a pedophile, knowingly allow a pedophile in because you've been given the responsibility to check the vet, to vet the poly, you'll get the penalty that was due that person.
Interesting.
So clean bureaucrats and clean politicians. How's that for a fresh start to Australia?
Yeah. Funny. Which school did you go to in Sydney?
Waverley College. And I know why you're asking, because we have lunatics online that say if you go to a particular school, you're obviously a Mason. Let me address that. I went to Waverley College. Waverley College in the suburb of Waverley. The reason we went there is my mother and father, I'm one of 8 kids, one passed early, so 7. We didn't have much money. We lived in and when the 7th was born, we only moved out when the 7th was born, we lived in a 2-bedroom flat. So there was mum and dad in their bedroom, the baby in the crib in their room, and 5 of us. We had 4 beds and 5 kids, one rotated. So we were penniless, basically. Yeah. And so mum and dad, they wanted us to have a good education, and it was that choice. And it's not a comfortable one, but it's one that a lot of people have to face. Do we buy the house or do we educate the kids? Yep. And they said, no, we've got to educate the kids. Yep. And so Waverley College was the best school they could barely afford. Now, there's myself and 3 brothers, so the 4 of us went to Waverley College. I only found this out later, well after I left. They were still paying their debt years after I'd left the school. Wow. That's how broke they were. Wow. So to allege that, I'm a Freemason because I went to Waverley College, I find it funny personally because it's just stupid.
I'm sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face.
No, it's fine. I'm glad you asked. But I tell you what, the person who's making these allegations is the same person that laughed at my wife when, and for reasons that I can't go into now. But she made these same allegations, these same lunatic allegations, and I just pray for her because she's not well, she needs help. But it's insulting to my parents' memory, who did nothing but serve this country as best they could. to have slanderous, and I think she's being sued by a politician because she asks the questions, who's your daddy and what school did you go to? And that's the base of allegation. Anyway, somebody's finally taken her to court, and she deserves it.
There's always a bigger fish.
It's fine. I don't care.
Exactly.
I don't care. We look at it this way. You take an oath to this country. You take an oath to the people of this country. If you have taken an oath to conceal and never reveal, if you've taken an oath to an organisation which supersedes your oath to the people, you have no place in A1. You have no place in Parliament. You have no place in the bureaucracy. Your days are over. Your days are over. Please understand that.
Except before God, of course. How many people are at Waverley College every year that graduate? What is it, 1,000?
Oh, I think the population has grown. It's. I think when I was there, it had a school population of about 1,100.
1,100. So that's a lot of Freemasons.
Oh yeah, no,
wow,
they're
that's
everywhere.
amazing.
Apparently, I can promise you, I've struggled for everything I've had and not had.
Yeah,
I didn't get any doors opened.
Yeah,
ever.
Yeah.
Either I succeeded on my own merits or I failed on my own merits.
Yeah,
and I'm good with that.
All right. Well, this is an open invitation, guys. If you've got more on him, I want to know about it. Hit me up. Send it. Write it in the comments, okay? Because if that was literally the extent of your evidence, his school.
I'll tell you what. One last thing.
Sure.
Okay. All of you interested individuals, I haven't seen your face on TV, nationally or internationally, fighting for the things that you allegedly care for. Joel does. He puts his neck on the line. I put my neck on the line. I haven't seen too many people put their neck on the line yet. So how about you get off your lazy asses and get to work and go through the same process of building a team, dealing with the crooks and the spears as we have in A1. We've had to, and some have joined up and resigned, some have joined up and been let go for a whole range of reasons. You do it. Get out of the stands and get on the field of play. Because it doesn't matter, your opinion isn't worth squat unless you're on the field trying to pick up that ball and get it over the line. Because you're not going to save the country.
And for
you're
God's
wasting
sake,
your time.
If they're in Queensland, my God, you should be handing out pamphlets and brochures and everything and helping Tracy up there. I mean, I would give a lot to be up there in Queensland, but for obvious reasons, I can't do much in 2 weeks. I can't film 2 episodes of The Ark if I take quarantine, and I can't be out helping Tracy if I'm in quarantine. If you guys are in Queensland, you better be out there helping him, not doing this bullshit in throwing mud and smearing people like Riccardo. If you got criticisms, great. Put it in the comments. We want to read it. I'll throw it at Riccardo if there's any credibility to it. But as I just demonstrated, the intellect of that smear was zilch. In fact, it's in the Democrat category. It's ridiculous. But let's move on.
One last thing before we move on.
Please.
Okay. I mentioned the movie Magnificent Seven. It was recently remade with Denzel Washington in the lead, and I like it. It's a tremendous film. It's just good, very satisfying. It's been updated from the original with Yul Brynner, and they're both different, but I still love the theme. But there's this wonderful scene, and this speaks to the people who sit back and just they think that throwing rocks on Twitter or Facebook is contributing to life. There's a scene where Denzel Washington and his six gunslingers come into town, and their job is to help the locals defend their town against a corporate criminal, effectively. And that's what A1's job is. It's not up to us to save Australia, it's up to us to help Australians save Australia. But there's this wonderful scene where half the population decides they're just going to leave. Every Australian gets to choose which group they're in, because there's only 2. It's time to decide. You can't sit on the sideline. There is no sideline. If you sit on the fence, you're going to get a very uncomfortable groin, let me tell you. But you're either going to fight for Australia or you're going to leave. And there's this scene where they all just disappear. Wow. But enough of the townsfolk come back, led by a woman, and I'm serious, buy the video, watch the video, it's fantastic. Yeah. And there's 1,000 lessons in it, because a good story well told will teach good lessons, and it does. Yeah. But that's where Australia is. This is the Magnificent Seven. Our town is under attack. You're either going to fight, and you might die. The average punter won't. I might. But I'm good with that. I'm okay. I signed a document a long time ago saying I want to be a soldier. You might go, yeah, no problems. Move on. Let's give me a fight. Yep. So some of us are at peace with that. I've got no problem. But you're either going to fight or you're going to run, because there's no middle ground now.
Exactly.
This country is lost. We've got 2 and a bit months before the Great Reset kicks off. And if anybody thinks that the globalists are going to back off for a second, they're deluded. They're going to push as hard as they can, as fast as they can, and they will take your kids. They have already taken your jobs, they've taken your freedom, and they're going to take your kids, and they're going to take your lives. Make a decision, folks. You're running out of time.
Exactly, and specifically to the ethnic community, I mean, I'm Lebanese and Syrian. There's no Australia to run to. This is the last place, you know, unless you're in the USA maybe. You know, Britain's gone, Europe's gone. The countries we've come from, if you're from India or if you're from Pakistan and you didn't like what was going on there and you've come here, there's no other Australia. There's no other Lebanon. If you've come from Lebanon, there's no other Australia. This is the place you want to fight and save. It's the last sort of pedestal to sort of fight from. There's nowhere else. The floods waters are coming. So you better get... You better get building, guys. Better get building this bloody ark, because we're going to need it. Then these torrential waters of the swamp are very high indeed. You mentioned that the globalists are trying to basically get rid of small to medium businesses and empower the corporation, while simultaneously also building a big government with a very big hammer. They've already been doing this for a very long time. As you said, they're very well prepared. And I did want to pivot, because I have to admit this last week of Australian politics has been particularly depressing. But I do want to pivot and talk about how the government's already been doing this in the black community in America and in the Hispanic community. Over there, they've got the easiest access for the black community and Hispanic community to abortion on demand. That's where something like over 70% of the abortion centres are located, Planned Parenthood. And it's disastrous. It's absolutely disastrous for the communities there. Anyone that's looked into the single fatherhood rate and the impact on the community understands this. I wanted to talk about the people in the Hispanic community and the black community leaving those communities. And we're just going to quickly watch a couple videos on this. The first one is from the Hispanic community. Historically, the Democrats have gotten over 50% of the Hispanic vote. I think that's going to change this year. I think it is, for a number of reasons. One of which is Trump put the wall up. And you guys might say, but I thought Hispanic people hate the wall. Not Hispanic Americans. Hispanic Americans love the wall. They love that drugs and illegal immigrants that aren't going through the ports of entry aren't getting in. They love that. And a physical barrier is what's needed. And the Democrats have taken the Hispanic vote as well as the black vote for granted for decades, like 40, 50 years. And this party of the KKK and these racists, which are the Democrats, the ones that were angry when slavery was abolished because they had to sell all their slaves, they are the people that are going to end up losing that vote. So we're going to look at this first video, and I can't remember the name of the individual in this, but he is a phenomenal speaker.
I'm going to let you in on something. The Democrats just think that they're entitled to the Latino vote. They think that we just have to hand it over to them. That's right. We sure as hell don't. Así mismo. Así mismo. They got to show us what they can do for us, what they can do for our communities. We're not going to buy the same wolf tickets and false promises that destroyed great countries like Venezuela and Cuba. It's not going to happen. You know what else is not going to work for them? Playing Despacito on your cell phone to pander to us.
Joe Biden did that.
No. You got to give us some credit for having heads on our shoulders. I'm going to wrap this up with some words of Barack Obama. He said elections have consequences. That is true. And those words have never been more true than they are today. We either re-elect President Trump and keep America great. Amen. Or we let Joe Biden destroy the greatest country the world has ever seen. Now, I'm a professional athlete and I've been one for most of my life, so I've always seen things through a sports lens. That makes Donald Trump our head coach. And before the global pandemic, we were winning Super Bowls. And when you're winning Super Bowls, you don't fire the coach. Doesn't matter if you don't like the plays he runs, the players he puts on the field, or what he says on Twitter. You sure as hell don't replace him for another coach that's been in the business for 47 years at every level and never won a fucking game.
We've just been demonetized. So that's the first video. That's from the Hispanic community, evidently. That was a Hispanic audience, for those of you that didn't realize. A sport's great, you know. Now we've got the black community. This is what we're calling Blexit now. The last one was Legsit, the Latino votes. This is Blexit, the black people leaving the Democratic Party.
Black lives have never, ever, ever mattered to the Democrat Party. Black votes always have.
The Democrat Party have established a house of token niggers. Token niggers.
Democrat Party, they want us to permanently be in a state of fear, racism, white racist Republicans.
They just put a black person in the White House for 8 years. Didn't do anything for us.
Here we go.
Are we such punks that we are so scared to try something different?
The Democrats are very nervous. They do nothing for you, and that was supposed to be automatic. Not anymore.
I'm curious, like, is this really about the politics? Like, how do we know this is real?
It's legit. You guys have a beautiful home and a lot of family photos.
Yes. A lot of people said that my family was brainwashing me, and that really bothered me.
I've had people that have known me for 7 to 10 years that have texted me and told me that I have a mental illness.
Ready? All right. Moving out.
For my sister at one time to say that you're a traitor.
A traitor to who?
A traitor to my race.
How do y'all feel about black conservatives?
Like, y'all house Negroes. Like, y'all just trying to please this white man.
These are lost, disturbed, self-loathing people.
Notice that all of those youngsters had caps on.
Because I think some people assume this is a play for votes.
Well, I haven't changed, and I'm not gonna change.
Voting for Trump is not about being a Republican.
Make America great again is for us too.
What does it make you feel like when you wear it?
It makes me feel like a proud American.
You have to defend why you voted for Trump.
Hillary Clinton. That's who they wanted us to vote for over Trump.
Just because you are black, you don't have to be a Democrat.
I am a black gay conservative, and I am proud of that.
We have to start moving like free agents.
What we gotta lose?
The people in this room are going to change America.
Just 1 minute left. So Trump invited some people over to the White House, just all black conservatives. Oh my God, you've got tears in your eyes. It's amazing, Riccardo, honestly.
Where are you standing? In the White House. Not bad. Not bad. The Democrats are very nervous, I will tell you. They do nothing for you, and that was supposed to be automatic. Not anymore. I can live with that. That's. I was never a fan. You know that, right? In the past, the black community has been promised everything from the Democrats, by the Democrats, and they've gotten nothing. Democrat policies have led to unsafe communities, failing schools, over-incarceration. When I ran for president, I asked black Americans to give me a chance with your vote by saying, what the hell do you have to lose? Remember?
I'm just gonna be honest. I never thought I would ever see this many black people in MAGA hats. President Trump received more votes from black voters than both Mitt Romney and John McCain. And a lot like his presidential campaign, much of the media seems to be dismissing the growth of the black conservative movement and instead is attacking their character and motives.
We all know African American.
Wow. This is the first time I got you crying on camera, Riccardo.
It's very important. This is exactly what Australia One wants to do for Australia. this is such a seminal moment in Australian history. We will get this right, with or without the help of a lot of people, because the future of the country, the future of our families, our children, our children's children depends upon it. It's always left to a handful of patriots to do what most people want to do but can't. And let me give you a practical example of what I mean. Bringing a nation together as Trump has done in the US, that's what we're going to do in Australia One. And I wasn't going to raise this issue, and I have once before in the last 24 hours, and I'll do it again now because it's important. I didn't want to raise it because I didn't want to politicise it. But this is to do with Aboriginal Australia. Now, the Liberal, Labor, Nationals and Greens have been controlling the narrative, controlling the Aboriginal issue forever. And what have we got to show for it? We have 2-month-old babies in Central Australia with venereal disease. We have people's sovereign rights, First Nation peoples, who have been messed up by Mabo, because Mabo was an inadequate solution on many levels. And legitimate claims have not been met. Last week, at the invitation of a particular individual, Jerry, I met with one of the spokespeople for one of the tribes, one of the First Nations peoples in Australia, to see if there's a way forward that we could resolve once and for all, in an equitable manner, the issue of black and white in Australia. Our start point is identical, our end point is identical, and our start point is this. Nobody should receive benefits based on the colour of their skin. Nobody should receive benefits or penalties based on the colour of their race, inverted commas. That's the start point. That was theirs, that was mine. Our end state is identical. We want one unified country. Now, how we navigate this journey will take time, but it takes patience, wisdom, compassion, and an unfailing pursuit of the truth, because the truth must come out throughout this entire process. So we've started this negotiation, and the way we're going to do it is this. We will start, and we have, with one mob, one tribe, one nation, and work out what's best for them. What are their needs, wants, their sensitivities, their strengths, their weaknesses, how they see it. And we will start that discussion, and away we go. Once we've gone through that once, we'll take that to the next tribe and do the same, and the next, and the next. And we'll move across Australia in a slow, measured, careful process to make sure that on an individual, on a human level, the solution to black and white Australia has deep, deep roots, that everybody, black and white, looks at it and says, man, this is brilliant. And our goal is to be an example to the world. The first time that the First Nations people and those that came after can live and work together in genuine harmony, in a legal and a moral and a cultural sense. So that's what we're going to do. And that's why I teared up, because that is where we're going to be. Australia One will do this. Now, understand this. If we don't get into Parliament, this continues. This is the point I keep making to people. Do you want votes? No, I don't want votes. It's not about votes. It's about saving the country. Votes is a means to an end. The objective is to save Australia. And saving Australia has many parts, and it's on our website if people want to go and look at what our vision of the future is. But that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's talk about Islam, another contentious issue. I thought that when I put my position on Islam out, that Western Sydney as an electorate was never going to come anywhere near us. Well, guess what? Wasn't I wrong? Because I don't have a problem with Muslims. I have a problem with Islam and specific parts of Islam. That's the political Islam and the cultural Islam, which is antithetical to the way we live. And by cultural Islam, I mean things like female genital mutilation, marriage at age 6 and consummation of that marriage at age 9, because that's what Muhammad did. Now, it's not my job or any Australian's job to reform Islam, but every time I speak and I have the opportunity to explain my position, if they wish to apply the 5 pillars of their faith, praying 5 times a day, giving charity, doing the Hajj if they can afford it, fasting during Ramadan, etc. If they do that, I have no problem with that. Yeah. That's their God, that is fine. That's none of my business. Yeah. I only get exercised when Australian law, Australian cultural standards are compromised and then facilitated by corrupt judges in Victoria. That's where I have a problem. And here's the blinding flash of truth that most people really already know. Most Muslims aren't interested in lunacy. Most Muslims don't want to be terrorists. Most Muslims just want to do what most of us want to do, which is raise a good family, buy a house, go on a holiday, and see their grandkids flourish. And this isn't too much to ask of anybody. And yet our government, just like with the black issue, they are ensuring that we are divided against Islam. And if then once Islam done, then it's sex, then they divide us against the gays, and then they divide us and they divide us. And that's why I teared up, because that's what we need to do. We need to unify. And as I said, we are taking hard practical steps now with the black community. Islam is exactly the same, but it's not our job to reform Islam. They have to speak up. They have to speak up. Exactly. But Australia One's goal is to unify the entire country. And so one of our policy statements is to abolish the Department of Aboriginal Affairs, Indigenous Affairs. You know why? Because there isn't a need for one anymore. Can you imagine that? There is no need for a Department of Indigenous Affairs, which costs $33 billion a year.
Oh, my God.
And where does that money go? And they've still got 2-month-old kids in Central Australia with venereal disease. $33 billion a year? Are you kidding me?
Far out.
So we want to abandon that. We want to get rid of the Department for Women, or the Office of Women's Advancement. Why? Because there won't be a need for one. Why? Because institutional sexism is gone as well. It's just not there. And so we reduce government interference, but we create the environment where Australians can live and work together in genuine harmony with real sound legal, moral and cultural bases to move forward. That's the vision for Australia One. Yeah. And so that is exactly what we're going to be. But we will be this shining example of what can be done to the rest of the world. Because all of these problems can be solved.
Absolutely.
And the reason they haven't been solved is because the politicians don't want to solve the problem.
Exactly.
Because they need to divide us against each other. Well, Australia One is going to unite everybody.
Exactly. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, guys, and say the reason why it's so similar and why we brought it up is because they're in the same situation. You know, what did Trump say? The Democrats have done nothing, given you nothing. 50, 40 years in power of some of these cities, like in California, done nothing for you. Baltimore, Democrat, 40 years, nothing, crime-ridden. And that's what we want to do exactly here. We don't watch the American stuff just because we like eating popcorn and watching a movie. Because we're learning these lessons. Because they're relevant to us. Because we're in the Anglosphere together. We're in this fight together. And I think in this particular case, the reason why I'm flagging it on a statistic perspective is I honestly can't see how Trump loses this election. I know the majority of the polls are against me, but I like to think I've got a very good feel on the pulse of the American people, even though I've never traveled there in my entire life. I've been a progressive. I rooted for Bernie Sanders in 2016, 2017. It didn't happen. And then I became a conservative last 2 years. And I seriously cannot see how Trump loses. I just can't. I mean, the guy might break my mind on election day if he loses. But the guy, I've seen one person, literally only one person in everything I've done, everything I've watched, the tens of thousands of hours of footage I've watched on politics, all the time I've spent on Twitter, Facebook, I found one person who actually went in person and voted for Trump in 2016 and is voting for Biden this time around. What does that say? Well, I'd assume, and it's a big assumption, but I think it's a safe assumption, that Trump's base, the people that voted for him in 2016, are going to be with him 100% or close to it in 2020. And all I've seen is people joining Trump. That's literally all I've seen. And with the black community, he got, as they said, he got a bigger vote from the black community than Mitt Romney and John McCain. He got 10%, whereas they got 8%. He's polled by some polling institutes like Emerson, Rasmussen, as having anywhere from 20 to 30% of the black vote. Why? Lowest black unemployment. The incarceration, he's passed some acts for the incarceration over there. Obama didn't do that in 8 years. Lowest level of food stamps usage in a very long time. He got rid of 9 million people off food stamps. And these opportunities that are being offered, he wants to start up opportunity bubbles for people in these areas like Baltimore. And lower taxes for people there. These opportunities are amazing. And that's what you want. That is what you want. And if it's not, then I don't know. We've got different goals. And Trump, I think he's going to get a massive percentage. I reckon he'll get over 15% of the vote for the black community. Over 15%. Why 15%? Because some people say that if he gets 15% of the vote, there are some states that the Democrats simply cannot win. And some people have said that they will not win a presidential election again if that happens against the Republicans. There's a statistic that I found, and this brings the Latinos into it, where about if a certain amount of people from the black community and the Latino community leave the Democratic Party, they will not win this election. And if you go to the 2016 numbers, guys, there's some great websites where you can move the different demographics, the women's vote, the elderly vote, the black vote, the Latino vote. There's a whole bunch of things. If you add 5% for Trump for the Latino vote, give him 5% more than he had in 2016, and you give him 3%, just 3% for the black vote, he's won. It's game over. I don't understand how he can't get an increase after his actions. And I know I'm putting myself out there, and if Trump loses, people are going to love showing this video in my face, but I'm going to love showing you this video if he wins. And everyone that we pay billions of dollars to the, how much is it, $1 billion a year or something to the ABC? All the millions of dollars that gets paid to these people to comment and educate us on what's going on around the world, and I get paid nothing for it. And I was right and you were wrong. It's not that I like rubbing your nose into it. It's that maybe the solution shouldn't be coming from you guys. That's just the point. But I think we should finish on that note, because you made an amazing pitch to the Australian community here, both for the black and the other minorities in the country as well.
I'll just finish off with what Trump said. What the hell have you got to lose?
Exactly.
Currumbin and Nicklin, vote 1. In Nicklin, vote 1 Bosi. In Currumbin, vote 1 Takax Thorn. And put whatever the hell you like after that. Just give us your first preference and watch the world change.
Beautiful. Well, Riccardo, thank you for your time. Keep sharing these discussions, guys. We're nothing without you sharing it. I'll be honest. We're literally nothing. If you share it, if every person, rather than liking it, shared it, we would be literally bigger than the ABC and Channel 9 and 7 and 10. I'm not even kidding. Keep sharing. It'll start a chain reaction. And for those of you donating, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. But Riccardo, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Joe.